Welcome everyone to Ask the Pastor. Do you think there's a better way to engage politics in America? That's our topic today, so hang tight and continue watching, and we're going to talk about that today. From Bridging the Gap, and today we want to talk about this topic of, is there a better way to engage politics? Last week we talked about if Christians should engage politics. We all agree that it's part of our calling as Christians, but how can we do it better? And if you don't think there's been a problem in politics the last several years, then you've not been paying attention. So is there a better way to engage politics? Should there be a better way? And have you seen any problems with politics the past few years?
Well, we could spend the next several months talking about all the problems that I personally have seen, but I want to address the initial question that's been posed for the day, and that would be other ways that you can involve yourself in politics. And one of the, I believe, the best ways is to volunteer. To volunteer at the various election sites, to volunteer at the main polling place, or when I say the main polling place, every city, every county has a main place where all of the results are turned in. I know that my wife, who is an avid person paying attention to the politics, local as well as national, she's been very privileged to work with the Summit County Board of Elections.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've learned so much of how the system works because she works there.
Right.
As a matter of fact, they've already signed her up for the general election. So she already knows what her schedule is, and it's usually it's a 5 or 6 day a week kind of deal, 8 to 10 hours a day. But there's a lot of fun activities that she's able to experience, and also being in that position. And this is one of the best things that I've seen come out of it, is that you have to work with someone from the opposing political party. And so that's vitally important when you get a chance to get to know how the system works.
Right.
I also always bring that up when people have this conversation, erroneously, I might say, when they're talking about what's fair, what isn't fair. There are no decisions made, no ballots, no nothing that is done without there being a team of opposing political parties working together.
Right. Yeah, it's extremely difficult to alter the results of any election in America. There's safeguards in place, and so it's also not fair for us to blame the poll workers or accuse poll workers of wrongdoing. They're taking their time and energy to provide that service for us so that we can exercise that right. So it's not likely there's going to be incorrect ballots or miscounting because you work with opposing sides, opposing parties. That's standard. It's required that we do that. So just take it out of the equation that poll workers are cheating the system or not exercising it in the correct way.
Well, we're looking at people that are virtually volunteers.
Right.
You're not going to get rich being poor.
No.
So they're there because they believe in something. In fact, I make a point, regardless of what party they represent, they're Democrat or Republican, to thank them for their service.
Right. Yeah.
And when I go into the polling booth, there's always somebody out supporting some issue. I always take time to talk to them, get to hear their view. Even if I'm opposed to it, I want to hear their view and tell them thank you that you have enough civic duty that you're coming out here and standing.
Right. They've been out here for a long, sometimes 5 in the morning. They're there. And they're there all the way until the polls close, working all day and even leading up to the election. They're there. So they're not cheating anyone. They've taken that time to make sure we have that right to vote. And whether we agree politically with them on everything, they're still people. They have families, they have lives, they have loved ones. So taking the time to thank them for that and to respect where they are, if they think differently than us, that's good. But those who are working at the polling stations, they aren't influencing our vote. They're not telling us which way to vote. Maybe others outside with information that trying to influence our vote, but they're not poll workers. They're of their own free will advocating a certain issue. But the poll workers are there to help us express our freedom to vote. So that's the first thing we need to decide and focus on is thanking the poll workers for their job. And if you're able to do it, take the time to volunteer as a polling person for an election, just to see what it's like for them and understand everything that goes through in that.
Well, and then two things to add to that. Number one, there's even as far as those that you may see who are working outside campaigning for an issue or an individual. There are laws governing how close to the polling place they can be.
Right.
So when people think about how some media has it out there that people are being intimidated as they're walking in, not so.
Not by poll workers.
Not by poll workers.
Not by poll workers.
Not by
We're talking about volunteers for a party.
Well, when I talk about that, people who are like carrying signs or banners or talking about different issues, yeah, those are volunteers.
I love meeting people that have a passion, but you're going to stand out there regardless of whether or what
Right.
you're going to stand there. I go there and engage them. I'm like, what their views. It doesn't matter if it's different.
Right. Yeah, people who take the time for the political party to stand up, they're taking that time as well to advocate for what they believe in. And I think part of the issue is we see them as opposing our viewpoint. So we just automatically assume they're this type of person, they're a bad person because they don't agree with us. When they're passionate about now, we all have our beliefs in that, and we should never condemn anyone, shame anyone, speak harshly against anyone. But if they're out there just advocating their point of view, it benefits us all to engage them. We can do that safely. So learn, why do you believe this? Where's this coming from? That way we can learn to respect them, first of all, but also understand what the real issues are going on. Because people have these beliefs and our issues that were important to us, but they came from somewhere. We developed them from somewhere, sometimes through our faith, through our experiences in life, through our family. And so engaging them, learning from them, while they're out there all day advocating their point of view.
Very important. And another point that I want to put in there as well, when I mentioned earlier about how they're always put together, the workers inside the polling places are always put together as far as the main board of elections. They're always put together by party. And so there's always a Republican and or a Democrat working together. That's the way that they're paired. Secondly, that they don't just get to walk in the building and say, hey, I'm this party or that party. It's already seen. I mean, they have to be registered as a Democrat or registered as a Republican. So in other words, they've been in previous elections and voted a particular way, identified a certain way. And for those who vote, you know that anytime you go to a polling place, that question is always brought up. Yeah. Who do you consider being? And every time you vote, and you vote a particular party, if you will, and that's with the exception of the general election. With all of your local elections, you have to definitely have it declared.
Mm-hmm.
When we have general elections, you can go in and vote a split ticket. But on your local elections, on your state elections, not so.
Right. So there are people there who are claiming to be independent so that they can influence things. You have to declare one party or the other and actually show that you voted that way. So it's really extremely difficult to mess up the polls and to alter the polls. So we need to, respect those poll workers who are there taking that time for us. So, if there's one way to do politics better is to simply acknowledge the poll workers who are there, understanding the load they carry in doing this, and the hurt that they will feel if we claim they've done something wrong. They've been unjust with the election. They're taking the time to do this. They're not altering. And then, even the counting It's very hard to alter the counting. It's not just one person in the back of a room taking it one way. There's people back there holding each other accountable. There's countermeasures in place. So respect the coworkers. What have you seen that's been problematic in our politics in the last, let's even say, 10 years in politics? What problems have you seen in America?
Well, I'll say it this way. I took a class my junior year for working for the under, and that class was called Rhetoric and Social Influence. And it excited me only from the place of I had never perceived rhetoric in a positive sense. I had always perceived rhetoric as having a negative connotation to it.
Right.
Well, when I took that class, it opened my eyes to the fact that we all have rhetoric. Everyone speaks rhetoric at some point in time. Now, the social influence part of it, that class was based on how rhetoric had impacted our country back in the 16 and 1700s. And I'm going to get to my point here eventually. In the 16 and 1700s, for those who remember stuff you were taught in grade school, there was this thing called town hall. And we know town hall meaning one thing today. Town hall back in those days, pre-technology, the whole city would meet at a bar or meet at some local place and talk about the events. And it was being written down. There was someone who was writing down the conversations. At the end of that meeting, they would load it up in the saddlebags, and a person would hop on their horse and ride to the next city and take the notes from that town hall to the next town hall. And then they would discuss it. And so that rhetoric that came from the first was then taken to the second. And those kinds of things had major influence. Now, today we have technology. And unfortunately, today, it's very difficult to find a wide open, nonpartisan place to receive your rhetoric. And so the problem that I see is that the vehicles to which we receive information are partisan. And rarely do we find one or find any kind of news person that is speaking just the facts without it being influenced, red or blue.
Yeah. Any news station you watch, it advocates one political view or another. And also, if you watch it, you can see that they're all yelling all the time on the news stations. So anyone you choose to watch, they have picked a political side, and that's what they advocate for. And they may have changed over time, depending maybe where the funds are or what the issues are. And so we have news stations doing that. Which is why I say just turn off the news. We don't need to watch it. There's enough stuff being yelled at us today. We don't need the news yelling at us also. But to also go out and engage your community, learn what's out there. I learn a lot of my news actually on Facebook. People will post it as it's happening. So you can learn news that way, and it's usually unfiltered as it's happening, which means you also got to filter through it, what really happened, so you're seeing it as it's developing. So I'm an advocate, never watch the news, because the news is biased in a lot of ways.
Now, I'm on the other end of the spectrum, but it also requires more work. Okay, because I will listen to both sides, and then I go do my homework. If I really want to know, there's an anomaly nowadays that many people pay attention to or don't, called fact checking.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is that I'll listen to both sides, and then I go do the fact checking to find out what's true, what's good to eat, to consume, and what can be thrown away. And so it takes more work,
mm-hmm.
But if you ultimately want to know the truth, and you use the time frame of 10 years, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, everybody operated from the same facts. Everybody operated from the same truth. They had different opinions about it, but the facts didn't change. The truth was still the truth. So how they would promote it or denigrate it was a political choice. But they were operating from the foundation was the same. Now the foundation is not the same.
Right. Yeah, I'm not even sure we have a foundation anymore. What the basis, and partly with advent of just modern technology, you can get information anywhere at any time of day, and so you have to filter that out. You know, what's Bible information, also as Christians compared to Scripture.
Right.
So what does Scripture tell us about this, and where's this information coming from? You read through enough information, you can see, okay, this is coming from a certain mindset, a certain perspective, certain political view of stuff, and so then you need to filter that out and understand why they're coming at it this way. So it does take a lot of work to filter that, but as Christians, it's kind of our obligation to filter through those things and to understand what's behind it.
Well, I'm going to take it even to a more specific point because we have three pastors that are seated here. For me, I believe as a pastor, it's my job. It's part of my calling.
Right.
And all three of us function from a place of being holistic. That is it's my responsibility to know the truth, to know the facts of the matter.
Right.
And not to know those things with the intention of telling people who to go vote for, but to give them the information that will allow them to make a good, educated, Bible-based decision on who to go vote
Yeah.
I'm more concerned about why people believe what they do than what they do.
Right. So am I. Where does this belief come from? We all have these beliefs, and we get them from different places. So where does it come from? Why do we have that? We may not even know where it came from. It's just always been a part of us, but it came from somewhere.
Right.
You know, when we were born, we didn't have any beliefs. It was just, we're in this new place, and we got to figure out how to survive. And so we've learned over time, you know, these two people who conceived us and gave birth, people start to believe over time, I can trust them, until you learn that you can't, in some cases. But we learn all the time what we should believe as parents. If we make comments about certain groups of people, our kids pick up on those things, whether we say it to our children or not.
Correct.
The things we say about people, our children pick those up, and so they begin to develop those mindsets. So if we make comments about people of color, well, when our kids go out to the world, go to school and out to the world, it's in their mind already, these biases against people of color, whether they knew it or not. And as an example of that, in kindergarten, where we were in line the first day, and I saw a black girl in our class lined up. I had never seen a black person before in my life. And I started crying because I thought that she was burnt, because I didn't know, I wasn't exposed to that. And so my mom pulled me out of the line. She was extremely embarrassed, and she talked to me and everything. And so you have to learn those things. And where I picked that up, I don't know. But somewhere in those first 5 years, I picked up that. Partly it's just experience. I've not been exposed to people with different skin tones. So it comes from some, Joe, I think you're right. The interest is, where does this come from? Not what it is, but where does it come from? And then is there a way to help engage that further?
And we also have to realize we do have biases,
Yes. Every one of us.
And I have to face my own bias, no matter how good it might be or how ugly it is.
Right. Yeah, we all have biases and prejudice. That's part of human nature. And so the issue is, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to live into it even more, let it dictate how we engage other people? Or are we going to acknowledge we have this bias? What are the limitations of this bias? How can I learn further about people? And that includes even politics. We all have our political biases. Sometimes it's our family always voted for this party, or that's what we learned about. And so our bias is that way, but why is it that way? And then how does that influence how we engage others of a different political persuasion. Are we resistant to them? Are we hateful to them? We've seen over the last several years that families have split over political issues. They no longer talk to each other, no longer greet each other, no longer see each other because of political issues. And we all have those biases, but what are we going to do about it?
Well, you say that, and as far as the family biases and those how it splits the families, I can think of, and I'm going to, for the sake of our broadcast, not make names known, that there's a particularly well-known, if I mentioned the name, everyone would know the family. But this particular individual has gone so far against the grain of what his family tradition is, and I mean that in a negative sense, that his family doesn't support him politically.
Right.
And here's an individual that is pretty high up the food chain politically.
Mm-hmm.
But because of how this person does not, and I gave part of it away by name, gender, but there's the person does not receive support from their family because of how against this person their family is.
Right.
And it isn't so much just about political party, it's about the different things that the person stands for.
Yeah, and I think that's true of many families. Different opinions politically, and even saying opinions is putting it lightly. You know, we all have these ingrained viewpoints, and I think in the last several years they've got more entrenched in each of us. Probably our politicians are to blame because they encourage that. You know, anytime there's a presidential election, I think, well, you're talking about your opposing candidate. And the way they're talking about them, they need to be locked up. If what you're saying is true about this person, how are they even running for office? And so we take that on that, you know, one we're against or that our candidate is against. There's no redeeming value in them. Now I admit there are some people that are so far gone that their redeeming value is just left up to God. We can't change that, but God can. But those that we encounter in our everyday lives, those are the ones that we know and love. And those are the ones that we need to engage in a loving way with each other. You know, we can't control national politicians and how they operate, but we can influence one another. And that's really what we're talking about here, is how do we engage with those that we know in our lives, who we know are not bad people. They're not evil people. They develop this bias for a variety of reasons. That's where they are. And resisting each other, rejecting each other is not going to change any of our hearts. Be more understanding of the other side.
We have become jaded when it comes to politics. You know, those stories, how can you tell if a politician's lying? His lips are moving.
Right.
And that's, regardless of I'm Republican, Democrat, we have this view that they're out for their own good, or they have their hand in our pocket.
Right.
So maybe we need how we look at who we're voting for and how we're voting for. And one of the things I noticed in the Bible, it says pray for the leaders. It doesn't say if you pray for the Republicans if you're a Republican,
right,
or a Democrat. It says pray for the leaders.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't say I have to like Joe Biden, but it does say I have to pray.
Right. Let's pray for his well-being and his guidance, leading the nation, and also understanding that everything the president is an easy person to pin everything on, good or bad. But understanding more about politics, that president has certain rights or certain privileges they can make about certain things, but also many things that they can't decide on their own. So any bills that come before them for signage, that has gone through both houses of Congress before it got to the president. And so they don't have the decision to make everything that they want to do. They have some executive power on things, but not all things. But it's a position that we can say everything's their fault. When gas prices are high, well, it's the president's fault that gas prices are high. Not paying attention to, well, you know, the economy's like this. We're going into a high travel season. So gas and oil companies are smart. We won't be more traveling. They increase the rate. It has nothing to do with who the president is. It's just business. So, whether we like our politicians, believe in what they're doing, we still need to vote for them. And not voting that they would vote or make decisions based on what only we want, but voting they would be guiding in the right way to lead the people going forward. And I know many local politicians in our community here, and all that I've met, they are really good people. They love and care about their community. Some of them we don't agree politically on certain topics, but it does not mean that they don't care about their community. They're very invested. They have families here. They have reasons, biases that they have, why they believe that, where that came from. And so to listen to their story, and a lot of them have gotten involved in politics, not for power, because they want to serve their community. They found for them that's a viable way for them to serve their community.
Well, I'm old enough to remember when Kennedy was assassinated. The whole nation, not just Democrats, not just voters, the whole nation. But why do we have to wait till a situation like that before we show support? Or I'm thinking about in New York City when the attack came there, 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
People that would not normally talk to us were working together. Why do we have to wait for tragedy to happen before we engage with others and work together? If there's a problem, that's okay. It's not a bad thing to address something. If you can address about something I'm not doing,
Right.
it could be a good thing. A criticism isn't always destructive. We have constructive criticism. And instead of fighting it, let's examine where are we wrong in the path we're going.
Right. Yeah. Let's not wait to a crisis or trauma to figure this out. But 9/11, everyone pulled together across religious boundaries, across political boundaries, pulled together for the good of the nation. But recently, we haven't been doing that, and it's sometimes like we're waiting for a crisis to happen to do it, but it doesn't have to. But we can work together here locally in our communities and set an example for that. Even in Washington, they're fighting with one another, but we sent them there. Mm-hmm. So we don't like what they're doing. We can send other people there. I know you say, well, they have the funds to advocate and get themselves elected, but we also have the power to not vote for them. We could write in other. We can lift up people in our own communities and state, send there. So we need to do that. If they can't get along, can't work things out, we need to find other people who can, and know that they're not the only model for politics that is out there. Right now, it seems that Washington's a very poor model of politics for us.
And the question, do we still support somebody when they're wrong because they're of our party? Now, say my country right or wrong, or my president right or wrong. Well, that's not the case.
Yeah.
We need to call evil as evil and good as good.
Right. Yeah. And presidents, they make many decisions every day on issues, and there's some that we may not agree with. And so we need to understand that I don't agree with this decision that they made, but there are other things that they have done for the good of the nation. So acknowledging the good work, but also acknowledging that this is probably not the best decision for our nation and our world, and hold them to that. Acknowledge that was not the right decision, that cost lives, wasn't the just decision. And so that's a very patriotic thing to do, is to hold our government accountable for their actions. Doesn't mean we don't appreciate what they've done that has been beneficial. It means, they made a mistake. And so we need to alter that, make sure it doesn't happen again.
Well, another wonderful thing, and we've talked around this subject thus far, is that if you want to know, going back to the question that is being posed for today, a way to participate in politics is to be in it. And if you believe that there needs to be change, and you believe that you have a voice for something that is going to serve the masses, then get involved. Run for an alderman's position. Run for a county committee's position. Run for various other offices that are on a local level. run for those offices. And whether you win or don't win, you have made your voice heard.
Right.
And then let's just say percent that you run and you win. Now the real pressure is on to be able to step up and be that beacon of light that is functioning inside of there. You know, and even if you lose, now everyone in your area, in your zip code, knows who you are.
Right.
And that gives you a whole other platform to continue to have conversations for godly change.
Yeah, if we don't get involved, then we can't do anything about it. So, even if you don't win, just the process of running for election, it opens your eyes to what that takes to do that. I was helping someone this past fall as a spiritual guide, their election campaign, their locally. Just opened my eyes to the reality of what all that entails for people. So just even if you don't have the energy to run, you don't want to be elected office, get involved in someone who is, understanding what it's like for them to do that. Go to city council meetings, contact your elected officials. All their numbers are listed publicly. You can get a hold of them. Set up a time to meet and talk, understanding what's heavy on their heart and why they got involved in this. So those are better ways to do politics, to get to know people who are out there already doing it, and also their burdens. It is not an easy job to be a political leader anywhere. And on top of that, you're working, you're raising a family. And so they have burdens as well. And I think they would appreciate even a word of encouragement, a word of thanks for their service.
And something most people don't know, unless it's stated for another reason, for a conversation that's not for public consumption. All of those council meetings are open to the public.
Right. And here in our community, they're posted on YouTube afterward.
Yes.
So, all those meetings, our city council meetings, they're open for the public to go. And there's things to spot on the agenda for the public to share.
Right.
And so with that, when you go, don't go with the attitude, I'm going to make my point known and they're going to hear me. I think we need to respectfully bring up our concerns. If we go with this attitude that we're going to make them listen, we all get defensive when people come at us defensively. So come at it with a different approach. I can promise you, if you come with a more gentler approach, people will be more responsive to what you're saying. If we come in there ready to knock some heads around and enforce our way, we're not going to get the response that we want.
Correct. Big time. Because people are still people.
They're still people, whatever office they hold. And I think there's even scripture, a few places that talks about kind word turns away wrath.
Yes, soft answer turns away wrath.
So, approach people kindly, understanding that they have a heavier burden than just our concern. And so seeing how our concern fits within the greater good and how we can help them. And they may say, bring us more information about this. If it's that important, bring us the information so that we can understand it. Being a pastor in our church, I never present our church council with information where I don't already have the funds available and a pretty good process of how we can do this. I don't just bring an idea unexpectedly and then get upset when they can't approve it. Because if we don't know all the factors involved, if we don't know how to fund it, how can they approve that? It's the same with our city councils. If we come with all the information that's available, and even some thoughts and ideas, well, we can get some funding for it this way if needed, they're more amenable to approving that and supporting us if we help them understand we do all the homework ahead of time.
That's key. If you want to be an influencer, if you want to be one who knows things, knows people, knows scenarios, it requires doing your homework.
Yes.
It doesn't require having merely an opinion.
We all have opinions.
Right. Belly buttons and other anatomy pieces. But anyway, the reality is do your homework. And then you can be an influencer because you've taken the time to look at the whole picture, not just your side.
Right. And so if you go to a city council meeting and you have your homework done, they can see, okay, they've invested the time and energy in this issue, and so they're more likely to respond we need some more information, or let's talk more outside of this meeting about this concern. So they're more likely to invest themselves in that. I just go in because I'm in a bad mood. I want to argue with someone today. And so if we go prepared, we're more likely to invest in that and see the legitimate concern.
I've signed petitions to get things on the ballot because somebody's there and thought it was important enough. Not that I would vote for it when it got on the ballot, but I think it's an important thing to have people have a chance to make a decision for themselves and for the country.
Right.
And at the ballot.
Yes.
So we at least have to get it on the ballot. Just because I don't agree with it doesn't mean it shouldn't be on the ballot.
Right. Yeah, it's important to someone. And so they have a right to bring that forward to the people concerned that. And they're taking the time to get those signatures for that. And also that, talk to them more. Why is this issue important for you? And who else does it affect? So we're all learning that. Why this is important. It also opens our eyes to some issues that we are not aware of. Because it's so easy to get caught up in our own concerns. But there are other groups of people who have these issues that they want their voice heard. So signing those petitions brings it to the ballot so that we can more be involved in understanding why that need is there. So all those are ways that we can engage politics differently, being involved in our communities, engaging our communities. And so I want to share some things that made me think about this a lot this past week with this question, how to engage in politics. And first thing I always want to say to people is to get over yourself. I think we're so invested in ourselves that we forget other people. Now, if you're a group of people that your rights are being violated or being taken away, then yes, those need to be advocated for. But if you have those rights already, and generally your life is going well, you have a steady job, you have income, all your basic needs are met, you're not in a dangerous situation, then please get over yourself. Not everything is about you. And giving rights to other groups of people does not take away rights from us. It's not like a pie. We have this idea that rights are like a pie. If you give rights to one person in the pie, you're taking it away from someone else. It's not a pie. Rights are ingrained at the beginning of our Constitution. These rights are inalienable. They're rights for everyone. And so we're not taking your rights away. So we really need to just get over ourselves on this stuff. And with that, then get invested in others. As Joe has shared, talking to people of a different political persuasion at the polls, people who ask for a signature to get something on the ballot, talking with them, getting involved in that, understanding where they're coming from, why this is important. So taking the time to invest ourselves in other people, especially in our families. It gets very hard in our families because part of the reason our families have split politically is we've not invested in each other. And so we don't feel like we can talk about these topics safely because everyone raises their voices. We yell at each other. We condemn each other. But if we were to get over ourselves in our families and then invest in listening, we'd be a lot further along. And then as we've shared throughout this, get involved in the politics of your community. You don't have to do it at a state level or national level. Do a polling, be a pollster at the polls for the election. Pass out information and flyers in your communities. Hold real town hall meetings. A lot of places to do that. If you don't realize, Google churches around your home. And I can guarantee you there will be 10 churches that show up within about a 5-mile radius. So with churches, you have all of these nonprofits available who are willing to help. I know at our church, at Greenview, we'd love to host town halls for our community to talk about these issues face to face. And so there's a safe place to do that. So hosting town halls for people just to have open conversation. And it's good to have a pastor here because a pastor can be neutral in setting up the guidelines and the boundaries of this conversation. So reach out to churches about hosting these things, talking about these issues. So get over ourselves, get invested in others, and then actively get involved in our communities. It's a great way to engage. So you can share your thoughts on that if there's other things you want to share.
Well, growing up for me, Thanksgiving was debated. Afterwards, it was debated. It wasn't just cerebral. It was very emotional. But we went back together as a family.
Right.
But this is just part of it. You argued it out.
Yeah, that's for a lot of people. Thanksgiving was a very tough day because that's when everyone got together because we didn't see each other for several months or a year because of work and travel. So we got together on Thanksgiving, and it was also typically just shortly after a presidential election for many years. And so people were amped up, ready to go one way or the other. But it's gotten to the point now to where we don't even invite each other to Thanksgiving. We don't want to see each other. And I think that's very heartbreaking. And we have to acknowledge for ourselves how we're contributing to that. You know, is our political stance of more value than our family?
Mm.
But in our family, this was a safe zone.
Mm-hmm.
You could give your opinion as emotional as you want to be, but it was a safe zone that you could express that without being called stupid or idiot or whatever name you would put attack to.
Right.
So I think sometimes to be able to do that freely, knowing that you're still going to be loved, we still love you. Even when you're wrong, we still love you. And sometimes I find out I'm wrong, but
yes.
Actually, at the time, I didn't voice it.
Right. Yeah. I think it's possible to do it in families, but we all have to acknowledge, we're not going to name call each other in our families. We're not going to shame those of different political views. And that's really hard for some of us to acknowledge. Yeah, you have your opinion, but someone in your family is really struggling with their political beliefs or they're at a certain place, but you can't point your finger at them. You can't shame them in your family. I think not where the breaking of families is coming is that someone is shaming in their family is so adamant that their political stance is correct that they're making others who are different than that feel ashamed of themselves and isolated. That's where the family splits. So yeah, it's a safe zone. You can express your beliefs on something, why you believe this, but you can't get up and start yelling and shaming others in the family. You can't degrade others in the family. If the family is a safe zone, when we come, we know we have different opinions on stuff, but it's also our family. And to me, our family is primary. Our politics should not supersede our families, because regardless of who's elected, our families are going to want are the ones who will be there for us, or they may not, depending how we treat them, based on our political beliefs. Same as work. You can work now as much as you want, but when you retire, your company's not going to be there. Your family will be there, or they won't, depending on what you've done now. Same with politics. Politics come and go. Politicians come and go. But in the end, who's going to be there at our last breath? It's going to be our family. The president's not going to be there. Politicians are not going to be there. Our family will be there, or they might not, depending how we treated them politically.
Right.
And that's what we have to remember in all of this. If you're conservative, progressive, liberal, Democrat, Republican, none of those things are going to matter at our last breath. All that's going to matter is the relationship that we have with our family. We keep that primary. That's really going to influence how we engage in political discourse.
The right to vote, our opinions, is so almost a sacred level to this country. People died for the right to vote. I will defend your right to the end to be wrong.
Right. Yeah, you're right. We all have those. American citizens have those rights to vote, and that's one of the ways we can use our voice is to vote what we believe and what we stand for, and that's okay. But also knowing that that's just an opinion that we're casting. It's not the end all, but our families are still there, and so that's who we need to care for the most. And if we aren't doing that, that's really affecting our country and our well-being. So we need to value our family above all things. And then politics, to me, it is, fifth down the line. So, my faith in God is first, and then care for my family. It's not number two, it's 1A. It's love God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. They're not two separate commandments, they're the same commandments. It's the same, loving God It's a relationship with God. Because of that, our family. It's right along with it. You cannot love God and not love your family. They're tied together. So that's what we need to care for. Then we go out, we work because we need to care for our families and have income to do that. And then, our goal in being involved in the church, that's as well. Your faith, you can have faith outside going to church. But the reason we go to church is to worship God as community and to have that community connection, faith with others. And so that's our faith, connection, relationship with God, and caring for our families. And moving on down the line, we work, we engage in our communities. But then also politically, we're invested in that. So our politics should not supersede any of those things. But it seems like our politics has superseded our families. It superseded our belief in God. I think we can all say here, it's become idolatry in America on our political beliefs. The way we prop up political candidates, our political opinions, it's become more idolatry for us.
That is just so very important that we understand. Going back to the topic, how should we be involved in politics? There's a variety of ways for that to happen, but the very key to it all is to not allow your politics to dominate your faith in Christ Jesus.
Right.
The moment we do something like that, things are out of order.
Mm-hmm.
They're out of order. And that is something that if you get nothing else from the conversations that we're having with you, don't allow your political views to take over as your faith. As Pastor David just shared, too many times we've allowed political people, persons, male or female for that matter, to take up a place of idolatry in our lives. And that is of one of the first of the 10 commandments. And understand this, that those 10 commandments, if I can go biblical for a moment, those 10 commandments were not written as a bunch of don't do's for the sake of being legalistic. They were written so that we would not hurt ourselves by getting away from God Himself. So hear me now. But they were not written as just a bunch of don't do's. He gave those to us so that we would not harm ourselves or anyone else.
Right.
And so I need to let that resonate, so that we can, take those scriptures and apply them appropriately. It would be just like we got 3 dads sitting here. When our children were in different stages with that. But with our children, we would tell them not to do things, not because we wanted to necessarily boss them, but because we didn't want them to hurt themselves.
Right.
Or someone else.
Right. Yeah.
And then we encourage them to do right things so that it would benefit them and someone else.
Right.
And so that I believe with all my heart, that's exactly how God views things with us. He wants us to have a better life, not a worse life.
Yeah, that's what the commandments are. We think that they're, these strict things that God imposed on us because God's no fun. But they're really a guidance of how to live. You look at those 10 commandments, it's how to treat one another. And the first several is our relationship with God.
Right.
And the rest are how we engage one another.
Right.
So don't steal. Well, we're stealing from each other, we'd have anarchy. So we don't need like governmental laws to tell us not to do that. God's already said it at the beginning. Don't steal from each other. Don't commit adultery. Don't covet what your neighbors have. Because if we did those things, it'd be a very dangerous world to live in. It'd be anarchy. It'd be like Mad Max. Okay? So that's why God gave those to us, partly out of love. We set those boundaries for our kids because we love them. We didn't love them, let them do whatever they want. Kids say, why can't I have more sugar? Well, it's not healthy for you just to only eat sugar. Not because we want to be mean. We don't want you to grow up and be sick, malnourished if you only eat sugar. So we want you to eat some other stuff. But on the other hand, if we say absolutely no sugar at all for kids ever, that's not healthy either. Kids need to enjoy some things too. So we're teaching them how to have sugar in a safe way. So yes, if we're out somewhere, we have sugar, we'll have some ice cream with the family together one night, but it's not every meal.
Right.
You can't have it for breakfast. Not because I'm being mean, you just can't eat ice cream for breakfast. And I know from personal experience because I've done that. It's not a good way to start the day.
Even with my daughter, we started early, letting her make decisions. But we discussed, why are you making this decision?
Right.
Even as a smaller, you're going to wear a dress to church. Do you want this dress or this?
Right. So giving them that freedom.
But still, we developed it and her to make decisions and think about what your decision is. Why are you going to do this? Why would you want that behavior? What was the ultimate result?
Right. Yeah, it's your decision, but also every decision we all make, there's a consequence involved in it.
And the truth was, there was no way I was going to have her in my sight for 100% of the time. So I had to prepare her for the face of world. And I remember the day when she came to Dad, how do I make a decision when you're not there? I took her to Philippians. Remember what is true, whatever is pure, whatever is wholesome, whatever. The list there, on these things, nothing. You can't say, thank you, Jesus, for what you're about to do. Don't do it.
Yeah. Yes. That's how I felt in my life. If it's going to necessitate a call from my mom, or if it doesn't give glory to Jesus, I really shouldn't do it. It's the same online. If you're going to post something online and you're not sure, do you want your mom to see this post? And would Jesus be proud of this post? If those two things are no, then don't post it. And we might say, well, it's my right to post it online. That's true, but every social media site is a private company. So it actually belongs to them when you post it. And your mother can see it. So if you don't want your mother seeing that, then don't post it.
Right.
If you don't want Jesus seeing it, don't post it.
Well, and we can circle back to, once again, our topic, how to be involved. Okay, is there a way to be involved? All the things that we've been talking about are all types of filters that we can use to denote how to be involved, if to be involved, when to be involved, all those kinds of things. The key is to not allow it to become idolatry.
Yeah, don't let it become idolatry. And, I think about, we see flags of different political persuasions around town and our homes. And I start to wonder, is that a form of idolatry? Because we're flying those flags even before the election, flying them nonstop. Just be aware, we're putting bumper stickers on our cars of certain political candidates. Well, that may be well and good, but understand, what else is that saying? Are we doing it? Is it really taking away from our glory to God? And so just be aware, if we're going to fly those things, what is it really conveying to other people and our relationship to God? So adultery is putting anything else before God. And politically, we have done that in America. And then we question, where is God? We've taken God out of America. Well, the last several years, we've propped up our politicians. And so we say, well, where's God? God can't dwell in our adultery. God cannot be present in our adultery. So if we get rid of the adultery, then God can be there with us.
I think the whole hymn, my hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. All other sin is sinking sin.
Right.
And if we're looking at anything else for a solution to our situation, our country's problems, our spiritual problems, it's sinking sin.
Yeah, that's right. We don't have the strong foundation. We're not built. We haven't built ourselves on foundation. We built it on political leaders, and every 4 years you can elect a different one. So that's shifting sand. That's not a solid foundation. So we've gotten away from the solid foundation of Christ. We wonder why we're having problems. And we're putting our trust in humans, in mankind, and that's not safe for us to do that. That's why we've lost our way. I see Mark breaking out his Bible. So,
well, I have two different verses that'll help That'll help us as we come to the close of this particular session. And the first one is found in Isaiah 45. And in Isaiah 45, verse 7 is the key verse of it all. It says, sure I got the right verse there. No, I want to go to Isaiah 59. And in Isaiah 59, I will go through the first 4 verses, and there's a whole lot more to it. And it starts by saying, see, the Lord's hand is not too short to save, nor his ear too dull to hear. Rather, your iniquities have been barriers between you and your God, and your sins have hidden his face from you, so that he does not hear. Now, and that's in the NRSV translation. I know the King James says that rather, in verse 2, it says, rather your sins have separated you from your God, and your sins have hidden his face from you so that he does not hear. The point behind all of that, as we've said repeatedly today, is to not allow our politics to form a kind of idolatry with us. Idolatry is sin.
Right.
So I go no further than that, and there's other verses that speak to that. But I wanted to use that one just for the sake of understanding how the scripture applies. Yes, we should be involved in politics. Yes, we should even participate in it in various levels. But the key remains the same, to not allow it to supersede our faith.
Yeah, our faith should dictate our politics.
But not the other way around.
Not the other way around. We have it the other way around. Our politics are dictating our faith. We know people are picking their church by political persuasion now, which is idolatry in the church. It shouldn't be that way. You have another one, Mark?
No, I was just checking something here, but that one right there is key for us. If we get that.
Yeah, so Isaiah 59. And as we draw to a close, we want to thank you for the last several weeks of joining us. We have some more Ask the Pastor coming up in the next few weeks on various topics, so stay tuned for that. And we want to thank the Jenks Building for hosting us these past 6 weeks. And our hope is to do some more at the Jenks Building, but also to be out in our community at different places. So be sure to look out for us around town. If you have questions, you could drop those in the comments. And if you have topics you want us to discuss, drop those in the comments as well. We'll try to answer those. As we close, I want to give a special thanks to all of our sponsors, our local businesses who have supported us through these past several weeks. And one is Danbury Senior Living in Cuyahoga Falls. And they are a great place that nurtures for the care and well-being of senior adults in our community. We want to also thank A. Casperson for their support early on of this ministry and all that they do. They work on windows, siding, roofing, doors, and more, so be sure to reach out to them in Cuyahoga Falls. And also, of course, to Clean Eats of Cuyahoga Falls, which is a wonderful establishment. It's women-owned, and if you want to eat healthy, Clean Eats is the place to go. They have food plans you can do. Every weekday, Monday to Friday from 2 to 4 is half-price smoothie. So be sure to go over there and tell them that the pastors have asked the pastor sent you over there. So we want to thank all of these sponsors for what they've done in supporting us. And thank you to everyone who's been joining us. It's been a great honor to sit here with Joe and Marv and to discuss these things and to learn from each other, to challenge one another. So we hope to see you at future Ask the Pastors around Cuyahoga Falls. Thank you and God bless.